Employees at an escape room, what was the weirdest things you've witnessed through the cameras? The group of guests managed to pull an entire twin bed, mattress, frame and all, through a thin passageway and into the final room through the secret door. They thought it would be part of the puzzle. It was not. There was a room with a bed in it. Instead of continuing to follow the clues, two guests proceeded to put themselves to bed and then take a nap for half the time. They weren't hurting anything, so I'll let it happen. Before they left, they remade the bed and tucked two of our skeletons inside. Nothing really earth-shattering here. The strangest thing I can think of is this one time the guest skipped every clue and happened onto the final solution to escape the room in the first 5 minutes. As I was heading towards the exit of the room to offer them a steep discount for completing the room on record time and seeing if they wanted to try another room, I overheard the guest starting to unravel the mystery backwards from the end point. Seeing them sound so excited and into the mystery, I walked back to my station and saw them solve every puzzle backwards in record time. After they got out, we shared some laughs over what happened, then traded a free coupon for their next visit if they told me how they unraveled everything so we can run it as a new scenario. My cousin went through an escape room with his friends and were solving the puzzles at an alarmingly quick rate. They were told the entire escape process would take anywhere around 60-90 minutes. Well, they were finished in 10 minutes. The coordinator running the room was floored and told them this was the quickest she'd ever seen someone escape. Thinking they were cheating, she went into the room. Well, whoever the employee was that cleaned up the escape room before them left the answer key behind. So my cousin and his friends had found the answer key and it still took them 10 minutes to escape the room. They got a refund and were asked to please try again. The story that comes to mind is a group of Swedish construction workers genuinely thought the solution to the puzzle was to lift the door off its hinges. Although a more common experience would be explaining to customers that the game isn't as fun when intoxicated, and then have them complain that the game was way too hard. That stopped when we started adding a histogram of every player's score on the souvenir photos. And their embarrassing times were way longer than average. Not an employee but my so's old neighbor worked at an escape room and we went to try it out. It was a lot of fun, but we finally got the lock off this big wooden door for access into the second half of the room. And for some reason neither of us decided to try the door. We kept looking for clues for around 10 minutes until, over the walkie, a couple broke up in the room I was running. My mother and her friends went to an escape room one night for a girls' night out. And while they were solving the room, one of them elected to just fiddle around with the final lock on the door, which was a 4-digit code, and miraculously unlocked it and walked out. I went to a place with my family and, while we went into our room, we saw some employees working on fixing another room. Apparently someone from a group before ours decided the only way out was to shoulder charge the door, which wasn't all that strong, and ripped the entire thing out of the frame. I guess they technically succeeded. I asked an escape room employee this once. Our room had a big metal safe. One guy who played in that room just picked up and carried the safe around the entire time. He was just playing it safe. Honestly, most of the odd stuff that happens is because us employees forgot to reset one part of the room. The worst was when this new employee reset a room for the first time by himself. He locked all of the locks, but never actually locked the door of each safe to itself. So the customers were able to open everything like there were no locks at all. He eventually became assistant manager at our store. We were desperate. Not an employee. While looking for a key, I put my hand in a box and pulled out a stuffed rat tied to a cord. I was convinced this was important. Stuck my fingers up a tear in the stuffed toy's asshole and started yanking out its stuffing, convinced I'd find a key, clue, something. I was quickly warned over the phone by an employee that the rat was just part of the set and to please leave it alone. TLDR. Got in trouble for fingering a toy rat at an escape room. We had Z'd a group that, within about 30 seconds, Worked out the code because one of the guys figured out a clue from the first 2 sentences from the video. Yeah, this one guy literally walked in and kicked the door down and walked through. His friends and I just stood there like, oh, okay then. My husband and I did an escape room a couple months ago for the first time. It was serial killer themed. So when we took the blindfolds off, we were chained in a dirty, dimly lit bathroom. After getting free, we picked up this pseudo-podium toy lantern that flickered to be creepy. We crawled around the room gathering tools and sharing this tiny flickering lantern. We solved about 4 puzzles in 40 minutes before discovering they had left us flashlights on a table to use. Best escape room story I ever heard was someone flying home for Thanksgiving while his sister had persuaded their parents to try out an escape room together. They arranged it with the staff so he was waiting for them in the second room. Not that crazy. That's a really ambitious NSFW tag. So there was this group of 5 or 6 teenagers in this one room. And at some point when they open a secret door, the lights go out, making it almost pitch black in there. Now the cameras we look through obviously change to using IR light. And I immediately see 2 of them go in a corner and start making out. So yeah. Pretty weird having to see that while their friends, less than 2 meters away, be oblivious to what their friends were wasting their time on. Lol. I did one and I'm partially colorblind, and one color I can't see is yellow. Early on, I found and announced the word 8 written on the blinds on the door in white. The last lock was a color number based lock, match the colors to the numbers, and a hint told us which ones we should have found, including white and yellow. We had 2 white numbers. One we thought was a clue to something else as it worked. After 10 minutes, we finally shouted out for a hint and they told us where the yellow was. My friend who requested the hint looked and shouted to us who checked the 8 on the door besides me, and it turned out it was just me. We hear him shouting for FCK's sake. How could we forget he's F-king colorblind? He shouted back to them I was the only one to see it and I cannot see yellow, and we hear them erupting in laughter along with a group doing the one next door. We're all laughing too by this point. We got out in under 55 minutes. This is not super relevant to the question, but a few years ago I went to an escape room to meet a Tinder date for the first time. He had paid for the session online and told me to get there at 7. He just didn't show up. I ended up completing the escape room with one of the employees there, because she felt bad for me and the session was already booked. Lol. Someone dug through 6 tons of sand on the floor to follow a live electrical cable which he then tried to chew through. Edit. This was after being told multiple times there were no clues under the sand. I had a girl pee herself in one of the rooms. It's important to note that our escape rooms aren't meant to be broken out of. You have a set objective in the room, so the doors are not locked. She could have left the room at any time. She just chose not to. I never got a chance to ask her why, as they left relatively quickly. Not an employee, but my family did an escape room where on one side of a wall there was a key in a maze and the other side had a magnet. You were supposed to work together. One person calling out instructions for the maze and the other navigating the magnet. My dad spent half an hour just playing with the magnet, successfully finishing the maze himself. When we finished the room, the employee came out and told us he never saw anyone do the maze on their own. I'm not an employee, but once my friend saw a kid try and suffocate another kid with a blanket in the escape room. So the hole in the wall isn't part of the game. One of my friends works for a mobile escape room, like a double-wide trailer that moves around for various festivals. And he told me that before he started working there, an extended Christian family had arranged a fun outing and the owner of the business had family-friendly versions that they approved of. I don't recall what the scenario was, but at one point, the family was so heavily divided. One stabbed the other with a pocket knife. My friend told me that he had to cover shifts where the employee who was working that night had to go to trial as a witness. I work as an actor in an escape room. Fun fact, only 6% of escape rooms in the US use actors in the room with participants, And one of our rooms has a prop toilet. You can tell where this is heading. Everyone always thinks it's a great idea to get drunk or high, or both, before they go to an escape room. Like that will somehow make you smarter. There were probably 9 participants doing the room, and one of the old guys had to pee so bad but didn't want to say the safe word to be let out of the room. He thought he was being sneaky and went over to the toilet to take a pee. But even when it doesn't look like it, we're paying attention to the entire room. Luckily I caught him before he whipped it out and took a piss. He was then escorted out of the room. He then spent the next 10 minutes trying to knock the door in to be let back in. Where the other employee was, I don't know. They didn't even solve the room. A lot of stories people would tell where I worked about customers escaping from the windows or going through ceiling tiles. But I worked as a game master for about 2 years and never saw anything close to that, so I never believed them. We used to have a couple that would come and repeat rooms and get paired with other people. I guess the point was to make themselves look smart. But a lot of times they forgot the answers anyway. Corporate groups were always the best because you could tell absolutely none of them wanted to be there. I always felt bad for the HR people who had set it up because some of the participants really didn't even understand the point. But I thrived on the awkwardness. Beyond the corporate groups, it was amazing how many people would spend $30 a person to book an escape room without having any real idea what it is. There was an episode of Impractical Jokers where Sal was the loser and his punishment was that he had to piss his pants while in a locked escape room. I would guess that the employees were in on it. But the other people in the escape room definitely weren't. We hosted an after-hours private event for a 50th party and the adults came drunk. They came in a limo and I'm sure they forgot they were even doing an escape room. They asked not to be locked in BC, they would piss in the room if they were locked in. They broke so much tea. Stuff that was clearly labeled "This is not a part of the game. Do not pull, twist, push." One big guy got so drunk, he puked in the wastebasket. It took almost an hour trying to get them out of the place after their time was up because one guy fell asleep. Everyone working that night got tipped $100 and after that, we had to pay staff more to work older birthday parties. I did an escape room with my middle school friends once. There were 7 of us. We were all stupid, so we took way too long to figure out the puzzles, but it probably didn't help that every member of the party was handcuffed right after entering the room and we couldn't find the key. In the last 20 minutes of the game we started getting desperate. And our game master told us that if we could do something to impress him he'd give us another hint. We made a human motorcycle. It was just us piled on top of one another and rolling around on the ground. We got the extra hint. A teenage girl flashed the camera. When I kicked her out, she was like, "I didn't know you guys actually watched." Yeah, and we record. I just sent the guy employee on break prior. Oh. I can weigh in on this one. I think my favorite story from my time working escape rooms was a husband and wife team. The husband was very enthusiastic. Even though he had no experience with escape rooms. He had brought a tool belt. Under the assumption that they would have to literally break out of a locked room. However, he was able to take it in good humor as I was able to gently disabuse him of the notion. Skip forward a bit. The room they're in is themed around a Victorian era haunting. The husband concludes, not completely unreasonably, that they need to hold a scenes. In order to do to this, he brings out his lighter to light all the decorative candles. I had to sprint from the control room to the escape room to ask him to please not light things on fire. I used to own an escape room. By far the weirdest thing was a group that came. Maybe 18-22 years old, they seemed nice albeit a bit nerdy. We were chatting while they signed their waivers and one of them asked if they could put on their capes. Of course we said sure and they disappeared for a few minutes before returning wearing full-on superhero capes and plastic swords. They unironically played the entire escape room role-playing superhero nights. To each their own. I guess good for them for being themselves. But was very weird. Can't wait for the explosive diarrhea episode. Not a worker but went to an escape room with my BF. pre-gaming heavily beforehand to do an escape room in Brooklyn by ourselves a random Sunday early evening. He has a habit of being able to fall asleep immediately regardless of where when drunk, and unfortunately this particular room had a bed where the people were very nice and offered to just refund us when he fell asleep on the bed, FCKing immediately. I was embarrassed, drunk, pissed off, determined, and tried to solve for clues for about 30 minutes before I gave up and asked to be let out. There was almost no one else there, so I'm sure it was a hoot cringe to watch. Kudos to them for still offering the refund when we left, but I was beyond pissed. I built one for the guys who made Sherlock. Reading the other answers here, you can imagine what the early stages of being open were like. I'm not an employee, but one of my most memorable experiences was in an escape room. My friends and I had been in the room for almost an hour and were just about to open what seemed to be the final safe. As we were opening it, we heard very loud footsteps coming downstairs from outside the room, heading our way. We all screamed and scrambled to open the safe. The safe finally opened, and in it sat a ring box. Just as my then boyfriend and now husband came into the room, he got down on one knee and proposed. And it was honestly the most romantic thing that has happened to me. He had planned everything ahead of time with the escape room operators. I had a couple come in during Valentine's Day. The dude was dressed in all black and signed his waiver as Dr. Sleaze, and the lady was dressed in sheer clothing and really left nothing to the imagination. I tried my best to be as professional as possible and keep my eyes up at all times. They were in a room with another couple who were experienced escape artists. The experienced couple didn't mind at all and were super focused on the game and really inclusive. All in all, they really weren't too bad and had a lot of fun. So much fun, in fact, that Dr. Sleaze and Naki lady wanted to play again. This time they were in a room with a family of 4, 3 teenagers I think, and let's just say it didn't go as smoothly for the person guiding that game. This one fat guy did a room by himself once. Proceeded to lay down and nap. Was in the escape room in Reykjavik, I think it's the only one, but anyways, one of the guys in our group thought the key to breaking out was to use the chair to break down the door. A girl just decided to lay down in the corner and sleep. She kept it like that for nearly 5 minutes until the horror started. Had 2 groups who had never met each other before the game come in. One group had a girl and the other group had a guy. They clearly hit it off, and instead of playing the game, leave the room to go to the bathroom one at a time. They thought I wouldn't notice. But whatever, they're adults. 15 minutes of their hour go by. They still haven't come back. I had a co-worker go check in the single person bathroom while I focus on the rest of the group. And sure enough, you can hear the head through the walls. Co-worker knocks and says she needs to use the restroom. Girl says she's almost done. Girl comes out and goes back to room. Guy never comes back. She's upset she didn't get his number. But we all just assume her BJ game wasn't worth a second go round. Not an employee. But when I went to an escape room, we had to do it in the dark. There was a box on a wall with circle cutouts, and me, just not knowing what I was looking for, kept pulling my arm back and screaming. Because I felt something fuzzy. Honestly, after getting out I laughed at myself. Because I probably looked so silly for being scared to feel around in a box. Not an employee. But I want to share this story nonetheless. I was with a group of 4 others in the last sequence of an escape room, where we all squeezed into a very small and dark room, think closet sized, where symbols and codes coated the wall while rhythmic noises kept repeating. Everything was very obscure and we were all at a loss. Given that our group of 5 was crammed inside such a small space, we were all kinda on edge and our senses were on high alert trying to figure out the puzzle. Then the door to our small closet room was suddenly pulled open and we all shrieked because we had no idea there was somebody else inside. In response to our screams, the person who opened the door then also screamed, which startled us once again. After this brief moment of chaos, we realized that the stranger was actually the employee at the front desk who likely saw us struggling and took pity to come help us out. Little did she know that we would both end up scaring the shits out of one another. Not an employee, but was locked in with 2 people enjoying the effects of meth. It was a slow build and we didn't realize until about 15 minutes in. Neither did the employees. By the end everyone knew and we were literally just trying to stay away from them. Almost got out in time too. Was pretty pissed at the time the employees didn't come in and cut it short, but I can see how they'd be oblivious to the situation if they weren't actually interacting with the people. Not an employee and not witnessed. I went to an escape room with my fun and loud friends. During the escape room the Last of the Mohican soundtrack came on the mix and my sister and I sang the violin part. When we left, we said loved the music. Last of the Mohicans is a great soundtrack and the man replied that music was composed by Ian such and I laughed. He continued. They composed that song just for their escape room. I informed him that it was Lotman and he just argued with himself for 10 minutes. It was wild. Surreal. I'm sure he can watch the replay of my sister and I magically knowing every note and harmony to this composition we have never heard cause it's by such and such. I have a bunch. Any really bad first dates? Hey. I don't know you. Let's go watch each other fail at something for an hour. Full stop. Worst one was this weird room which was actually not a room but 2 coffins separated by a small hole and you have to communicate with each other to get out. The guy did not tell the woman the type of date they were on. First date. Tinder. It was a surprise. I had to put bags in their heads and lock them in small cages. She was very uncomfortable but she did it. With a complete stranger. Most awkward 45 minutes. They did not escape obviously. Theirs was this room. All in the dark. For 2 people only. Each person on a different part of the room that can only communicate with each other through a small wall. You can't see anything. You have to feel your way around it. All of a sudden I hear babe. Grab this. And yes. The guy's passed his girlfriend his member through the hole. Someone had to tell them to please not pass each other's genitals. Also. They did not escape. Lots more. My co-workers and I would play bingo. This lock is broken. It's not. Open box but not checked to see if anything was inside. Ignore obvious ticking bomb case in scenario where you're trying to find a bomb. Older skeptical guy that came with the family because his wife made him ends up having the most fun. Runs around solving things with childlike glee. Everyone ignores the kid that solved that puzzle 10 minutes ago. Bingo. I once broke the main puzzle element in a room. There were multiple handle-less drawers to open. Some through other puzzles. Some through tools. And one that was supposed to open electronically when you solved something somewhere else. Like in video games. You can often tell if something is a movable object as it's got slight wear and tear on it. So we knew which drawer was next to open. And that it would be the final one. We had a suction cup. Which was used to attach to a different drawer to pull it open. So I thought I'd give that a go. Ended up ripping out the entire mechanism that was supposed to release the final item. Luckily, I didn't get charged. However, I bet they now keep spare parts for it in case someone does it again.